Awesome. Let's get started, everyone. We are jumping into our virtual adventure for kids through Utah's Mighty Five National Parks today. Can't wait. I love Utah. All right. So what and who is Austin Adventures? As most of you know already, I'm Kasey Austin, president of Austin Adventures, and we're going to be learning about Utah's 5 national parks today. And in this picture, here I am with the Austin family in Arches National Park. I was 14 years old. My brother was 12 years old at the time. I'm 31 now, so this was obviously a long time ago. That's Delicate Arch in the background in Arches National Park. And Utah has some pretty incredible national parks that are very worthy of a family road trip. So I can't wait to show them off to you today. It's gonna be awesome. I was also just over in Moab, which is just outside of Arches, last October with a bunch of our guides. We were having like a guide retreat at the end of the season last year, which was really fun. So I also got to go play around here a little bit last fall too, which was really cool. All right, so back to Austin Adventures. Our company creates guided active vacations for families like yours. And these are vacations where you get to go hiking and biking and horseback riding and whitewater rafting and really fun things like that. And you get to sleep in nice hotels every night. You get to eat really good food. They're really fun guided vacations. So if you're not comfortable going out there on your own, then maybe get in touch with Austin Adventures and we can get you on a trip. Our company is family owned and operated. I work with my mom and dad every day, although we're all working from home right now. But it's probably a lot like what all of you are experiencing during this pandemic, since we're all kind of stuck at home right now. I don't know about you guys, but here in Montana, they're actually letting kids go back to school, which is pretty wild. It's up to the schools if they want to allow people to go back to school or not, but there are a few schools in eastern Montana, which is very rural, not a lot of people over there, that are going back to school this week. So there is hope. And we're going to be embarking on these virtual adventures Thursdays at 2:00 p.m. Eastern through the month of May. So we hope you'll join us weekly. All right, and for those of you who joined us last week on our 6th virtual adventure, we went to Peru. And I saw already in the Q&A a lot of you referring back to this presentation. It was really fun last week. We learned all about the Incas, the Andes Mountains, and the Amazon, the 3 A's. I guess the Incas are not an A, but ancient civilizations, if you remember. We explored Machu Picchu, Lake Titicaca, Colca Canyon, Lima, Cusco, Arequipa, all those really fun places that hopefully inspired you to want to go to Peru someday. And if you didn't get to watch, you're welcome to go to Austin Adventures website and go find the recording. It is there at this point. They're usually posted the day after I do them. So feel free to go catch yourself up. And last week, you guys had some awesome questions, and I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for your questions again today. So that means we better get started, huh? So let's keep on moving. All right, everyone. So where are we going today? Today, we are going to journey through Red Rock Heaven on our adventure to what I like to call Utah's Mighty Five national parks. I think that's a pretty common term, actually. And what are Utah's 5 national parks? Does anyone know? I'm just curious if you know them. If you know them, why don't you go ahead and type any of them that you know into the Q&A box now, and I'll see what you guys have to say. I'm just curious to see if anyone knows a couple of the national parks in Utah. All right, I'm getting a few I don't knows. Okay. All right, I'm seeing some good answers come in. Okay, cool. Good job, people. I'm seeing a few wrong answers come in too, which is fine. That's okay. This is what the point of the webinar is today, is to educate you as to what the 5 are. Nice, let's see. Ashley, she's thinking Zion. That is a national park in Utah, awesome. Let's see, Lindsay and Jennifer also say Zion. That's probably one of the more popular ones, so I see that one coming up a bunch. Dee Dee says Arches. Yep, that is one. Dominique says Grand Canyon. Ooh, that one's down in Arizona, but it's really close. It's down in the Southwest still, but it's not one we're gonna go over today. We got a lot of Arches. Jody, Tamara, Guzal, Arches, Zion. Ooh, Canyonlands, I haven't seen that one yet. Leah, nice. Yep, we're gonna go to the Canyonlands today. Guzal and Wayne are saying Bryce. Canyon. Yep, Bryce Canyon National Park is the full name of that national park. There's one that I haven't seen yet in here. There's kind of a fifth one that's a little bit more secretive, and I'm looking through everyone's responses and I don't see it. But we're going to go into it right now. There's a lot of good responses. Oh, Denitza, she says Capitol Reef. That's the first person I saw that said it. Awesome work. Dee Dee, Bryce, yep, okay, cool. Anyway, I've seen all the answers now. Good job, people. It sounds like a lot of you actually are pretty educated on your national parks in Utah, which is great. And let's go over really quick what the 5 are, just in case there was any confusion there as I was shouting them out. So we have Canyonlands National Park, we have Arches National Park, we have Capitol Reef National Park. That's the 5th one that a lot of people couldn't remember. We have Bryce Canyon National Park, and we have Zion National Park. So again, that's Canyonlands, Arches, Capitol Reef, Bryce Canyon, and Zion. Those are our 5 national parks in Utah, okay? So the surreal scenery of this state and wide variety of activities, all located within a relatively small geographical area, make this an easy way to check 5 of America's 62 national parks off of your bucket list in one trip, which is really cool. So that's kind of what we're going to cover today. So I know a lot of you have been through this before. It might be a bit repetitive for those of you who've joined our virtual adventures before, but those of you who are new and are joining today, I obviously need to go over what a national park is, right? Especially since we're going to be visiting 5 of them today. So this is just going to be a really quick refresher for you regulars who join me every week, okay? And then obviously this might be an intro to some of you who haven't been on. So first of all, there are how many national parks in the US? There are 62 national parks here in the States, and yes, this includes the parks over in Alaska and Hawaii. And what is a national park? This is the technical definition if you look up what a national park is on Google. So a national park is a scenic or historically important area that's protected by the federal government for the enjoyment of the general public or to preserve the area's wildlife. Okay? So if we talk about it more in kids speak, a national park is a special place in which everything is protected inside its boundaries. Okay, so that's the big aspect, is the protection part. And a national park generally will look the same today as it does 100 years from now. So if you go and visit Arches National Park in Utah this summer, it'll probably look about the same as it did for your grandparents if they visited Arches National Park 50 years ago. And it'll probably look about the same for your grandkids if they visit Arches National Park 50 years from now, okay? So there's not going to be any billboards advertising the nearest restaurant in the national park. There's not going to be a food truck right next to Delicate Arch offering hot dogs for you to buy. There's not going to be a giant Marriott hotel that's 10 stories tall built in the middle of a nature trail. No. There's a lot of rules for new development in these national parks, and the big focus and the main priority is to preserve nature and the wildlife as it is. So that doesn't really allow for a lot of development. So ideally, it'll kind of look the same, okay? All right, so where is Utah? Some of you, I think, know where this place is because it sounds like some of you have family and friends who might live in Utah, or you've actually been, which is awesome too. So where is it located? You can see Utah outlined on this map. It's a landlocked state and it's bordered by 6 different states: Wyoming, Idaho, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. But did you know that one of my favorite geographical features is right here? Utah is one of the 4 corners states. I don't know if any of you have heard of what these are, but 4 corners is the only location in the United States where 4 states come together at one point. So you can see actually in that little square on the map where 4 corners is at. See how all those states come together in one area? That doesn't happen anywhere else. So that's where 4 corners is where Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, and Utah all meet at their 4 corners. So if you ever visit the monument here, you can put 1 foot in 2 states and 1 hand in 2 of the states. And technically you can be in 4 states at the same time. What? That's pretty cool, huh? All right. So why is it called Utah? So first off, experts don't really agree on where Utah's name comes from. Some say it comes from the Spanish nickname for the Ute Native American tribe, Utah. That kind of sounds like Utah. Others say the name could come from the Ute word Yutas, which is said to mean the people or people of the mountains. I guess just pick whichever one you like best and roll with it. Utah is nicknamed the Beehive State because the early pioneers considered themselves as hardworking as bees. The name is thought to have been coined by people of the Mormon faith who came to Utah in 1847 seeking religious freedom. All right, and one of my favorite things about Utah is that it's a public lands state. In fact, approximately 75% of the entire state, which is more than 35 million acres, is public land. Wow, that is cool. I know what you're thinking right now. What are these public lands you speak of, right? And in the broadest sense, they're areas of land that are open to the public and managed by the government. Okay, so you can think of as land that you own and share with everyone else in the United States. So there are three different types of government that manage public lands. We have federal government, we have state government, and we have local government. Public lands can be national parks like Arches, Canyonlands, Zion, Bryce Canyon, and Capitol Reef, the ones we're going to today, but they can also be state parks or local city parks as well. And public lands is a pretty cool concept. I bet you didn't know until today that you technically own 35 million acres in Utah. So do I. I mean, yeah, I own the same 35 million acres, and so does everyone else in the United States, but that's kind of beside the point. We all own that 35 million acres, which is awesome. It's public land. All right, so we're gonna do our first check-in here. I'm going to just launch our poll number 1. Let's launch right now. So you should be seeing this poll up on your screen here any minute. All right, so take a look and read through those questions. I'm going to read through them as well here. Let's just make sure everyone can see it. Oh yeah, I'm seeing some votes come in. Excellent. All right, so number 1 is, which of the following is not a national park in Utah? Is it Capitol Reef? Is it Zion? Is it Four Corners? Or is it Arches? We talked about all those, but which one is not a national park? Then we have our second question, which is, what is the nickname for the state of Utah? Is it the Treasure State, the Beehive State, the Centennial State, or the Equality State? Those are actual nicknames of states here in the States. So which one is it? Which one is for Utah? And then we have true or false. Public lands are areas of land that are open to the public and managed by the government. Is that true or false? I'll give you just a few more seconds here to answer. Looks like most of the answers are coming in. Oh yeah. Ooh, that first one's kind of tripping you up a little bit. We haven't been through all of the national parks yet, so you're going to learn them by the end of this presentation if you don't know which one of those is not a national park. All right, guys, I'm going to end the polling and we're going to share our results. So the answer to that first question, which one is not a national park, is Four Corners. That one is near all the national parks, but it's not a national park itself, although it is a monument, okay? Yes, we will be learning more about Capitol Reef, Zion, and Arches, which are all national parks. 3 of the 5 we're going to learn about today. And the nickname of the state of Utah is the Beehive State. Good job to those of you who got that right. Remember, those early pioneers thought they were as hardworking as bees, so that's why they call it the Beehive State. And it is true that public lands are areas of land that are open to the public and managed by the government. All right, good job. Looks like we had some really good responses, although that first one kind of threw people off, but that's okay. We have not learned about the national parks in total yet, so I forgive you for not getting that one right. All right, let's keep moving along. So now that we know a whole lot about the state of Utah, let's dive into how we might go about exploring its 5 national parks. So right now I'm basically sharing with you the exact same route I'd take Austin Adventures guests on on a Mighty 5 tour to go explore all the different national parks. So you're getting like some serious insider knowledge right now. And because all 5 of Utah's national parks are within pretty easy driving distance, I recommend exploring the area by vehicle on a road trip. If you run this itinerary like Austin Adventures, you'll spend 8 days and 7 nights visiting these 5 national parks. All right, so every good road trip has got to start somewhere, right? And this is going to sound a bit weird seeing as how this adventure takes place in Utah and all, but we're actually going to start our road trip in Grand Junction, Colorado. And Grand Junction is about 2 hours drive from Canyonlands and Arches National Parks, which are the first ones we're going to explore on this tour today. Grand Junction has a nice regional airport, and it's the most convenient airport for limiting your drive time. And you can also fly into Salt Lake City, the capital of Utah, which also has the most flight options for you, but your drive time is also going to double to 4 hours to get to our first 2 national parks. So 4 hours if you fly into Salt Lake, 2 hours if you fly into Grand Junction. I vote the 2-hour option. I don't want to drive more than I have to. So that's where we're going to start today, okay? And you can kind of see on this map that the whole drive itself only takes about 10 hours, it's saying, by Google Maps. You never can totally trust Google Maps though, right? But it's a good estimate. And I guess the one thing that this does not account is actually going into the national parks. So once you enter the boundaries of the national parks, then it's going to take you some significant drive time to get around in the national parks. So you also have to account for that in your drive times. All right, so Grand Junction. This place is known for its awe-inspiring natural beauty, its exhilarating outdoor adventures, and its charming downtown full of great shops and restaurants and galleries. A few of my favorite things to do in Grand Junction are exploring the nearby Colorado National Monument at sunrise. Really nice, guys. This place has actually been voted one of the top 10 best places for solitude in the US. I bet that sounds pretty nice to a lot of people right now, especially your parents. Oh, I mean, I didn't say that. But yeah, Colorado National Monument is a really cool, special place, all right? You can also rent a sup board and go stand up paddleboarding on the Colorado River, which is pretty cool. If you're into golfing, you can go hit a few balls on one of the city's beautiful public golf courses. There's 5 of them there. Or you can check out the Museum of the West to fulfill your inner cowboy or cowgirl. Yeehaw! All right, so there's a lot to do in Grand Junction, so I recommend staying at least 1 night in this town if you have time. All right, so Grand Junction was really cool, but it's time to move on to our first national park already, Canyonlands. Every time we move from one destination to another, I'll show it to you on a map. So here you're going to see that we're going to travel about 2 hours to get from Grand Junction, Colorado, down to Canyonlands National Park, which now has us transitioning from Colorado over to Utah. All right, so on each of these transition slides as well, I'm going to share with you a favorite tip for hiking in these different destinations, since in my opinion, the best way to explore each of these national parks is by walking the mini trails that they have. So my first hiking tip has to do with what time of day you should be exploring these national parks. Now, I should first mention that most families who visit Canyonlands and nearby Arches National Parks go during the months of June, July, and August. Why do you think that is? Probably because you're out of school, right? That makes sense. But also, June through August happens to be the hottest time to be in these national parks. And it's not uncommon for it to be over 100 degrees in the heat of the day. Woo, that's hot. With that being said, I recommend what I like to call the early bird method of travel. I know that it can be tough to get you kiddos moving early in the morning, but the earlier you get out, the better, because you'll avoid the heat and the crowds. And when I explore these places, I like to actually get out on the trails no later than 7 o'clock a.m., sometimes earlier even, all right? The sun is up and at 'em by like 5 in the morning in the summertime. So the earlier you can get out, the better. And I like to be off the trails by about noon when the sun is at its highest, because it's getting really hot at that point. And my afternoon, usually, you know, if I spend the whole morning exploring these national parks, my afternoon is typically spent maybe back at my hotel or back at the campsite, depending on what I'm, you know, where I'm staying, just kind of relaxing, taking a nap maybe. If my hotel is a pool, I'm definitely swimming in the pool when it's that hot. Or if I'm transitioning from one destination to another, I would go explore in the morning and then go drive from, you know, one place to another in the afternoon during the heat of the day. That makes the most sense to me. And then if I'm really ambitious, I might go out exploring again after dinner when it starts to cool down. So after a day or two of following the early bird method, you're gonna get into a pretty good rhythm and it'll be pretty easy to keep that going. All right, so we've made it now to Canyonlands National Park, which is Utah's largest national park, all right? So Canyonlands is an area of wilderness filled with countless canyons and fantastically formed buttes carved out by two different rivers and their tributaries. These two rivers, the Colorado River and the Green River, divide the park into 4 districts. And you'll see those written on the slide here. We have Island in the Sky District, we have the Needles District, we have the Maze District, and we have the Rivers District. And because the Canyonlands is the biggest national park, you definitely need to know which district you're going to, okay? So although the districts appear close together when you're looking at a map, there are no roads that actually directly link the districts together. So traveling between them requires about 2 to 6 hours by car. So if you're only in the Canyonlands for a day or two, it's probably not realistic to fit in more than 1 or 2 of the districts in a single trip, unless you're spending a lot more time around Canyonlands National Park. An Island in the Sky, the first one that I wrote on this slide, is the most easily accessible of the 4 districts and offers some incredible, expansive views from its many different overlooks and some really cool hikes of different lengths. It's a perfect part of the national park for families to explore. Some of the other ones, like the Maze, are really hard to get to and you need a 4-wheel drive vehicle and all sorts of stuff. So if you only have a few days, go check out Island in the Sky. And what I love most about Canyonlands National Park is the amazing geological features that have been sculpted by water and gravity over hundreds of millions of years. A few of my favorites are actually pictured on this page. So we have fins up there in the top left. So we're going to hear fins quite a bit more through this presentation, so pay attention, all right? A fin is a narrow wall of sedimentary rock that remains standing after the surrounding rock has eroded away. So that's what a fin looks like. It almost kind of looks like a bunch of books on a shelf, in my opinion, all right? So if you see a bunch of books like they're on a shelf in geologic form, that's a fin, all right? And we have our mesas and buttes, which is in the bottom left corner. And these features are tall, flat-topped, steep-sided towers of rock that are created through the process of erosion. And the only difference between a mesa and a butte is their size, basically. That's it. They're actually kind of the same feature. A butte is taller than it is wide, and a mesa is much larger, but slightly shorter, okay? So it just kind of depends on which one you're looking at. And really, you can call them either or for the most part. And then we have spires as well. And spires are slender, isolated columns of rock, okay? So we got our fins, we've got our buttes and mesas, and we've got our spires. And of course, there are many other geologic features that we could cover that are located in Canyonlands National Park, but I'm sure we'll cover a few more cool landforms in our other Utah national parks. So let's cover a few neat things you should see while you're out hiking the trails in the Canyonlands. Oh, look at me out there in Canyonlands National Park. Very cool. If you only have time for one hike in the Island of the Sky district, it should be Grand View Point Trail, this one that I have been photoshopped into, okay? I think the name says it all. This 2.1-mile long trail follows the edge of a slim mesa and provides outstanding views of the massive canyon, which stretches all the way to the Needles district. So most of the hike is a safe distance from the cliff edge, but there are no safety rails, so don't get too close to the edge. And parents, keep an eye on your kids. Yes, I'm going to be photoshopped into a lot of these, by the way, for your enjoyment. So another favorite of mine is the Mesa Arch Trail, which is a super easy trail that's less than a mile long to get to Mesa Arch. This is Mesa Arch in this picture. The arch itself is pretty small and a bit underwhelming compared to some of the others in the area. But once you get up close and you see the views through the arch of the Canyonlands beyond, you'll get why this is such a popular hike. So it's really those views that are out through the arch that are really, really cool, okay? And no, you cannot hang off of the arch like I'm doing here. Totally photoshopped, people. All right, and chances are that if you're visiting Canyonlands National Park, you're interested in seeing beautiful and interesting natural formations. And trust me, there's no shortage of cool rock formations anywhere in the park. And if this is you, you'll want to make sure to swing by the Upheaval Dome, where you can see a really interesting rock formation which has scientists kind of scratching their heads. Even today, no one can agree on what caused this formation. I always love a good mystery. So fun. Again, this is a hike that's less than a mile one way, and I've always loved, those mysteries that baffle scientists to this day. So this is a really fun one for kids. All right, it's time to say goodbye to Canyonlands, and we're gonna head to Moab for overnight at one of the accommodations or campgrounds in the area. So Moab is a really neat small town, and it serves as a good overnight base for visiting both Arches and Canyonlands National Park. So I think this is a great place, Moab itself, to spend 2 or 3 nights to explore all this area has to offer. So you can see on this map that Moab is actually a little bit closer to Arches National Park, but either way, it forms a really good base camp, I guess you could say, between the two, so you can stay in one place for a few days instead of having to switch hotels or campgrounds or whatever. Okay, so after spending the night in Moab, we'll head to nearby Arches National Park, which is practically a hop, skip, and a jump away from town. It's right there, right? But before we explore the world of Arches, let's cover another one of my hiking tips. All right, so hiking tip number 2 is on what to wear. All right, my second tip on what to wear, I wanted to cover this just because you're in a desert-like landscape when you're in these areas. And we already talked about how hot it is in this area during the summertime. So what do you think you should be wearing clothes-wise? It's probably really tempting to wear shorts and a tank top just to be as cool as possible. But the best thing that you can do when hiking in this area is actually to wear long sleeve shirts and pants in order to shield your skin from the strong sun of the desert. And your clothes should be breathable, lightweight, light in color, and loose fitting. So in other words, don't wear your black t-shirt with your tight fitting jeans, unless you want to suffer from heat stroke. And I'll mention, if you do choose to wear shorts and a tank top, wear sunscreen and keep reapplying it constantly throughout the day. It is so easy to get a sunburn out here, and I'm sure you've all had a sunburn before. It really can ruin a vacation. Not fun. When I've been hiking around in these areas, it is amazing to me all the sunburns that I see and people still wearing shorts and tank tops. I'm like, oh, cover up. All right, so we've made it to Arches National Park, my friends. A visit to Arches will have you discovering a landscape of contrasting colors, landforms, and textures unlike any other in the world. And this park has over 2,000, did you hear that? Might need to remember it later. This park has over 2,000 natural stone arches, in addition to hundreds of soaring pinnacles, massive fins, remember those fins we talked about earlier, and giant balanced rocks. This Red Rock Wonderland is truly going to amaze your family with its incredible formations, refresh you with its trails, and inspire you with its sunrises and sunsets. It is gorgeous there. So I bet you're wondering, why are there so many arches in Arches National Park? This national park has the densest concentration of natural stone arches in the world. Like I said, there's just over 2,000 of them in the park. So how did so many arches form in this one area? Well, the first thing you need to know is that this area is covered by a rock called Entrada sandstone. Okay, it was deposited here as sand in an ancient inland sea more than 150 million years ago. And over time, it was buried by new layer upon new layer. It hardened into rock, and it's shaped by the powerful forces of erosion. Now, taking a look at this diagram that is in front of you on this screen, let's quickly talk through each stage. So in arch formation number 1, which is that first one on the left, we have a series of uplifts and collapses that cause severe cracking in the 300-foot layer of buried sandstone. Do you see the cracks starting to form in that first picture? And in arch formation stage 2, which is the next one over, we have the rock layers at the top eroding away at the cracks. So they're eroding from the top down. The cracks are slowly widening and parallel rock walls called fins are formed. Remember those fins we were talking about over in Canyonlands? And that's just kind of the starting stage of an arch. In arch formation stage 3, rainwater is continuously dissolving the natural cement that holds the sandstone together. And this process combines with the pressure from water freezing into tiny cracks, and it causes the sandstone to flake and crumble, all right? And eventually, enough rock falls out of a fin that an opening is formed. Hello, baby arch. See how that little arch is just starting to form in that third picture? And in arch formation stage 4, the hole continues to erode and makes a bigger and bigger hole over time, forming the arches that you can see today. And what's crazy is that the same forces of weather that created the arches will also destroy them over time. So new arches are constantly forming while old ones will occasionally collapse. I think this explanation just about covers the geologic formations that Arches National Park is most famous for. So let's cover a few of my favorite kid-friendly hikes and what you might see along the way. Need a little bit of water. A lot of talking. All right, so first, let's check out one of the most famous arches in the world, Delicate Arch. Delicate Arch is the most Instagrammable superstar attraction of the park. It's also one of the busiest trails, so make sure to get there early, all right? The hike to see the arch up close is a moderately easy 3-mile round-trip trek. Everyone is on the trail to see the Delicate Arch, but as a huge bonus, the trail itself is a lot of fun with great views of the surrounding park, okay? In the middle section of this hike is basically just a large sloped section of slick rock, which kids of all ages will find super fun, and parents. I also think it's really fun. And once you get to Delicate Arch itself, the up-close views of this highly photogenic arch are pretty incredible. And no, you're not allowed to jump on top of this arch like I'm doing in this picture. All right, and then we have the Devil's Garden Trail. So the Devil's Garden Loop Trail is actually 3 separate hikes stitched together with a total round trip distance of 7.2 miles. And anyone of any age and ability will be able to hike a flat and easy trail to see this arch in this picture, Landscape Arch. It's one of the longest stone spans in the world. And at a minimum, it's worth the drive to this most northern section of the park to see this arch. It's massive. Very cool. And last but not least, if you're looking for a genuinely kid-friendly activity in Arches National Park, look no further than the Sand Dune Arch Trail. This super short and easy trail leads to a small arch with a sand dune underneath it. It's basically a beach without an ocean, which is awesome. Kids can flop down in the sand and play, and if you're really prepared, you might even bring a pail and a shovel. The sand dune itself is a good enough reason to visit with kids, but it's also nice and shady, which is perfect for escaping the hot desert sun. All right, we have reached poll number 2, people. So I am going to launch our second poll. Hold for 1 second while I get it launched. All right, it should be launched. So please go take a look. I'll be reading these off in a second. Just looking over at the Q&A to make sure I'm seeing all of your good questions. Awesome. And no, there's not a lot of video or anything like that in this presentation. This one's pretty low key in that regard. For those of you asking, is there music or video? No music or video today. Maybe in the next one. All right. Cool, so I'm gonna read these off really quick. Which of the following geographical features is a narrow wall of sedimentary rock that remains standing after the surrounding rock has eroded away? Is it a spire, a mesa, a butte, or a fin? A narrow wall of sedimentary rock. Which one was that? Lots of good answers. All right, what is the name of the outdoorsy town that many travelers use as a home base with a location near Arches and Canyonlands National Parks? That was a quick reference, but it looks like a lot of you are getting it right. Is it Moab, Jackson, Alta, or Bozeman? And then approximately how many arches are located in Arches National Park? Are there 2, 200, 2,000, or 2 million? Which one is correct? All right. All right, I already see some good questions coming in here, people. Nice. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results. So, which of the following geographical features is a narrow wall of sedimentary rock that remains standing after the surrounding rock has eroded away? That is a fin. Nice job to those of you who got it right. Looks like 74% of you got that one. And what is the name of the outdoorsy town that many travelers use as a home base with a location near Arches and Canyonlands National Park? That is Moab. So nice job to those of you who got that one right. Although the other 3 on there are also very outdoorsy towns. Some of them in Utah, some of them not. And then we do have over 2,000 arches in Arches National Park. So those of you who answered Arches are correct. Nice job, people. I see a lot of you have been listening. I'm going to stop the share results and we're going to keep moving on. So we've spent our fair share of time in the Moab area exploring Arches and Canyonlands National Parks. Now it's time to make our way towards our 3rd national park, which is Capitol Reef. And as you can see on this map, this is a solid 3+ hour drive. I recommend that you do this drive during the afternoon, during the heat of the day, after a morning spent exploring the Moab area. So let's cover another hiking tip. This one is things that you should carry in your backpack when hiking in desert country. And as kids, you need to make sure your backpack isn't too heavy, so your parents might need to share some of the load. But the first point that I can't emphasize enough is to bring more water than you think you'll need when hiking in the desert. If you're hiking in the heat of the day, you should be drinking around 1 quart of water per hour. Wow, that's a lot of water. And water is heavy, so plan accordingly. Or hike in the morning maybe when it's not quite as hot. But if you're hiking during the heat of the day, bring a ton of water. Bring more than you think you'll need. Also, be sure to bring some snacks along. Salty snacks like pretzels or nuts are perfect to replenish all that salt you'll be losing as you sweat in that hot desert heat. And this sounds like a no-brainer, but bring and wear your sunscreen, okay? And your sunglasses too. They're very important for that really hot weather and that sun bearing down on your skin. Also, we talked about what you should wear as one of our earlier tips. Always bring an extra layer or 2. Even though the desert can be extremely hot during the day, it can be quite cool in the morning or the evening. And last but not least, bring along a brimmed hat, one that protects your face and your neck. It should go like all the way around, okay? Those are my hiking tips for what to have in your backpack. All right, people, we've made it to Capitol Reef. Capitol Reef National Park is in Utah's south central desert, and it's Utah's least visited national park. And probably a lot of you hadn't heard about this one before. The park surrounds a long wrinkle in the earth known as the water pocket fold with layers of golden sandstone, canyons, and striking rock formations. And this place has kind of an interesting name, don't you think? Capitol Reef. Capitol comes from the time when early explorers came across this area and thought the Navajo sandstone dome-like formations, the ones in this picture, looked like Capitol buildings. And the reef of Capitol Reef is talking about the rocky cliffs that are a barrier to travel. Kind of like a ship can't pass through an ocean reef, early explorers also couldn't pass through the rocks of this reef either in the early days, okay? So that's where the name came from, Capitol Reef. And Capitol Reef's main feature is what's called the water pocket fold. You know how your grandma or grandpa have wrinkles on their face? I'm starting to get them too. The water pocket fold is basically a giant wrinkle on the Earth's surface that's almost 100 miles long. It's the largest of its kind in North America. Also known as a warp in the Earth's crust, it's believed this warp and its resulting canyons, monoliths, and domes were set into motion by the same crashing continental plates that were responsible for building the Rocky Mountains. Up close, this ancient formation ripples with multicolored stripes of different layers of white, pink, and red rocks. So you can see in this picture, very scenic, right? So let's go check out a few kid-friendly trails in Capitol Reef. Our first stop to get out of the car is going to be at the trailhead for Hickman Bridge. This is one of the most popular hikes in Capitol Reef, but for good reason. This 1.8-mile hike begins with a lovely stroll along the Fremont River and then transitions to a moderate climb, which provides outstanding views of the surrounding cliffs and valley. This trail eventually enters a scenic valley with many large and small caves, which are super fun and safe for kids to explore. And the hike ends at the Hickman Bridge, which is a 133-foot natural stone bridge nestled in a beautiful setting. All right, and that is totally not allowed what I'm doing, by the way, but kind of a fun Photoshop picture, right? Chimney Rock is a natural stone tower that's over 300 feet tall and is easily spotted from the main highway. At a minimum, you should pull into the parking lot and take a closer look at this natural wonder. But even better, you can hike up the mesa right next to it and look down on the Chimney Rock. The views of the valley from the top of the mesa are incredible, and the topography of the land is very beautiful with many valleys and cliffs looming overhead. This hike is a 3.6-mile loop, and as you can imagine, there's some uphill involved to get up there, so you're looking down at that chimney. But it really isn't that bad, and I'd rate this trek maybe as moderate. It's easily doable with kids, in my opinion. All right, and this last section of trail is one of my favorites for families, the Capitol Gorge Trail. It has something for everyone. Parents will appreciate the raw beauty of the narrow gorge with its mighty walls looming overhead, while kids will love running wild through the sandy bottom of the gorge, able to be free without the risk of getting lost. Throw in some cowboy history, petroglyphs, and 100-year-old graffiti, and you've got a fun half-day outing exploring this short and easy trail. All right, people, we're off to Bryce Canyon next, so we're going to need to jump in the car to take a 2.5-hour drive to get to our next destination. While we're driving along, let's learn another hiking tip. So my fourth hiking tip has to do with leave no trace. Have you heard of leave no trace before? I hope so, because leave no trace is awesome. And what does it mean? Simply put, it's the best practices we should allow to enjoy and protect our natural spaces in the outdoors. And there are 7 principles of leave no trace. I bet a lot of you have heard of this before, okay? So first of all, we have plan ahead and prepare. So when you're poorly prepared, you're likely to run into problems. I'm sure some of you have been on kind of disastrous trips in the past where you're like, oh, if we prepared better, this would have gone better, right? Make sure you know the rules of where you're visiting, prepare for the weather, and bring a map. Then we have traveling on durable surfaces. This means you should stick to hiking trails that are already established, okay? And even if the trail is wet or muddy, you should just walk down the center of the trail through the mud. Imagine if everyone walking the same trail walked around the mud to the side. That's going to break down the edges of the trail where you're not supposed to be walking, and the trail is going to get wider and wider and wider over time, which is not a good thing. It's actually best to get your boots a bit muddy, because your boots can be cleaned, right? Not a big deal. And that is what they're made for after all. So I'm here to tell you that you should walk through the mud. All right, then we have our third principle of leave no trace, which is dispose of waste properly. So anything you bring along on a hike should be brought out with you and thrown in a garbage can. This includes wrappers, plastic bottles, toilet paper, and even leftover fruit like an apple core or banana peel. You don't want the wildlife in the area snacking on your leftovers because those aren't natural to them, okay? And other people don't want to see that kind of thing either. It drives me crazy if I'm walking along a trail and I see a banana peel off to the side. Yes, maybe that'll biodegrade at some point, but it's going to take years and years and years, and it's going to be there as an eyesore to people after you who are hiking that trail. All right, and then number 4 is leave what you find. I think this one is the hardest for kids when I'm guiding on trips. If they see something really cool, they really want to bring it home with them. So this means if you come across a really cool rock or a flower, you should leave it where you find it for others to enjoy. So let's pretend you're walking down the trail, and you see a flower that's really pretty, all right? Chances are that another kid who hikes the trail after you will also think that that same flower is really pretty. But if you pick that flower and bring it home with you, that kid hiking the trail after you will never get to see that flower. Instead, If you bring a camera with you, take a picture of that flower, and you'll get to keep that picture forever, and you leave that flower behind for that next kiddo behind you on the trail to enjoy just as much as you did. So leave what you find behind, especially in these national parks. It's actually illegal to take things out of the national parks. Then we have minimize campfire impacts. So building a campfire is awesome. I love doing it myself, but it's best to use existing fire rings that are already there if at all possible. So also just keep your fire small and put out your campfire completely before you go to bed, or if you leave the area, make sure it's out as well. You do not want to start a wildfire. That would be awful if you were the person responsible because you didn't put your fire out. All right, then we have respect wildlife. This one makes a lot of sense, so I won't go too into it, but just make sure you give any animals you come across plenty of space and never feed them, okay? And then number 7, treat others the way that you want to be treated. Be considerate, okay? It's definitely okay to have fun on our trails and you can sing and things like that, but just be respectful to other visitors that are using the trails as well. We don't want to disturb their experience. So those are our 7 leave no trace principles. So now let's get back to our 4th national park, Bryce Canyon. All right, welcome to Bryce. Bryce Canyon here, home to red rocks, pink cliffs, and endless vistas. Isn't that beautiful? Wow. Bryce Canyon is home to the largest concentration of what are called hoodoos on Earth. And what are hoodoos, you ask? They're basically just these really cool looking irregular columns of rock, kind of like what you're seeing in this photo. Those are all hoodoos. Bryce Canyon is not a single canyon. Bryce Canyon is in the name, so it kind of sounds like it's a single canyon, right? But it's actually a natural, it's a series of natural amphitheaters, or kind of like a bowl shape, carved into the edge of a high plateau. So many of these bowls are filled with these otherworldly hoodoos I just talked about. So that's so cool. I love hoodoos. All right, so just like if you were following a recipe to make some cookie dough, there's also a 3-step recipe to creating Bryce Canyon's hoodoos, okay? So we have first our deposition of rocks. The first step of our Bryce Canyon recipe is to create the famous hoodoos, involves a deposit of flat-lying rocks. So Bryce Canyon's rocks reveal stories of an ancient lake and floodplain system, which first appeared 50 million years ago. And then tiny particles that are floating in the water, they went down to the bottom, they landed on top, made some layers, and they accumulated and cemented together to create Bryce Canyon's rocks. But remember, at this time, everything was flat as a pancake, okay? Then we have uplift of the land, all right? So what happens next in our 3-part recipe is an uplift of the land with plate tectonics. Ever heard of plate tectonics before? Plate tectonics can be thought of as a giant puzzle piece that creates the surface of our entire planet, okay? And the Earth's plates are in constant motion, always moving. Sometimes these massive pieces of Earth crash into one another, and that's exactly what happened here. One tectonic plate went underneath the other and pushed the other one up, and a bit of underground heat into that recipe pushes the land up even further, and then you have yourself a piece of land that is elevated to nearly 9,000 feet of elevation, like we have here in Bryce Canyon. And then our 3rd step of the recipe here is weathering and erosion, and that kind of goes for these last couple of pictures here. So the last piece of our recipe is the weathering and breaking down of rock and erosion of that broken rock. So weathering and erosion are the 2 forces of nature that work together to sculpt Bryce Canyon's beautiful hoodoos. The main natural forces of weathering and erosion that create the hoodoos are ice and rain. The elevation in which Bryce Canyon is located receives both above freezing and below freezing temperatures over 200 nights out of the year. That's more than half of the days of the year in which Bryce Canyon reaches above or below freezing temperatures in the same night. And this is actually crucial to creating the hoodoos. The different shapes of the hoodoos depend on what the different rocks are made out of, and some rock types weather and erode more easily than others. And you'll notice that some layers of the hoodoos jut out and some indent inwards because of this. All right, and voila. Just like that, we've made ourselves a nice little Bryce Canyon hoodoo in just 3 simple steps. That just Happened to take a million years. And now for a few of my favorite hikes for kids. Oh my gosh, what am I doing in this picture? The Queen's Garden Trail is one of Bryce Canyon's most popular hikes due to the relative ease to get incredible views and see hoodoos up close. Beginning at Sunset Point, you'll walk north along the paved rim trail. The views of the famous Bryce Canyon hoodoos from this trail are absolutely incredible. You don't even need to do any real hiking at this point to enjoy the vistas at the view, because basically the views are just minutes away from the parking lot, which is pretty cool. And before long, you'll arrive at Sunrise Point, where the actual trailhead of the Queen's Garden begins, and then you descend into the canyon for some up-close views with the park's most famous landmarks, these hoodoos. And the hiking becomes super fun at this stage. You wind down, around, and even through some of the hoodoos, and only when you're up close can you get a true appreciation for the sheer size of these incredible rock formations. Really cool. All right, and now we've made it to the trailhead for the Mossy Cave. Ooh, the Mossy Cave. And this hike is not in the main part of Bryce Canyon, but it's still a popular family hike as it's really easy and short. It's about a mile each way, and it has a waterfall and a cave that is quite mossy or filled with icicles, depending on the season. And along the way, you kiddos will enjoy crossing the bridges like me, hopefully not on top like I'm doing here, that's photoshopped, and balancing on fallen tree trunks, which is also really fun. And then we have our Fairyland Loop Trail. This is last but not least, Fairyland Loop, really cool trail, one of the best hikes in Bryce Canyon National Park in my opinion. Fairyland Loop is ranked strenuous by the National Park Service, which I mostly agree with, although maybe I'd call it more of a lightly strenuous. It's a 7.5-mile trek with over 1,500 feet of elevation gain. And although that might sound scary and really hard, in reality, the elevation actually comes in 3 major uphill sections, which really aren't that bad. And there are a lot of downhill and flat sections throughout as well. So I think it's doable for kids, especially older kids. And doing the entire Fairyland Loop is worth it for the babbling brooks, the beautiful trees, the towering cliffs, and the hoodoos that all come together to create this really magical landscape. It is so pretty. Awesome. Thanks for sticking with me so far, guys. We've made it to this point where we're shuttling on over to our 5th and final national park, Zion National Park. It's a few hours away from Bryce, and we're going over to the town of Springdale, just south of the park, and that's where we're going to spend the night. And before we enter Zion, let's go over one last hiking tip. I guess this isn't really a hiking specific tip, but it can be kind of lumped into the hiking category, I guess. But anyway, my 5th tip is on how to become a junior ranger. Maybe you've heard me talking about this before in some of our other presentations, and I've actually had some people, some kids on these presentations send me pictures of themselves with their junior ranger badges, which is so cool. I love junior ranger programs. So my 5th tip for you is on how to become a junior ranger in one of our national parks. Junior rangers are like mini superheroes because they pledge to help our national parks, okay? So what does it take to become a junior ranger? The National Park Service Junior Ranger Program is activity-based, and it's conducted in almost all of our national parks. So all you need to do is when you're visiting one of these national parks, you just need to stop by the nearest visitor center to pick up an activity booklet. And as you're driving and hiking around to learn about these parks, you just fill out the booklet as you go. It's that simple. And once you complete your booklet, you again take it to the nearest visitor center and share your answers with a park ranger. And the park ranger will have you take an oath to protect our parks, continue to learn about our parks, and to share your story with friends and family. And upon taking your oath, you'll receive an official junior ranger badge or patch and your junior ranger certificate. It's that simple. It's really cool. And you can get a different badge from each national park you visit. So on a trip through Utah, visiting 5 national parks, you can get 5 different junior ranger badges, which is really cool if you put in the effort and the work. I think it's pretty respectable to be a junior ranger. I'm a junior ranger in Yellowstone. I haven't gotten my junior ranger patches here, but any age can do them, okay? I want to make that clear. You parents out there too can become junior rangers. All right, guys, we finally made it to Zion. Zion was Utah's first national park, And this place holds some of the most scenic canyon country in the United States. Within Zion's boundaries, you'll find high plateaus, a maze of narrow, deep sandstone canyons, and the Virgin River and its tributaries. And this beautiful place also has 2,000-foot Navajo sandstone cliffs, pine and juniper-clad slopes, and seeps, springs, and waterfalls supporting lush and colorful hanging gardens. So cool. Nice. I see a lot of you too are talking about how you have Junior Ranger badges. That's awesome. I love it. Keep it up. Keep getting those Junior Ranger badges every time you go to a national park. I love it. All right, so we're not going to go too far into Zion's geology because there's a lot we could get into here, and I know this presentation is getting a bit long. I don't want your eyes glazing over or anything. All you need to know about Zion for now is that more than 250 million years ago, the stunning geologic features of Zion were formed. Once the area was covered by a low body of water, eventually huge rivers carved their way through the landscape, and later it was left one of the largest deserts on the earth. And this desert's sand dunes became what are now the breathtaking 2,000-foot cliffs of Zion National Park. The park now houses what are some of the most scenic canyon views in the country. As you can see from this photo, it's gorgeous. All right, Zion shuttle buses. That's what I wanted to cover really quick. So before we go into my 3 hiking recommendations for Zion, I just wanted to mention for all you road trippers out there that if you do visit Zion National Park anytime between spring and fall, you can't actually bring your car into the park because there just isn't enough room for parking and it's too congested. So you'll have to take one of these shuttle buses into the park. And especially in the summer, you want to arrive early because the shuttle buses fill up quick. But just have that in mind when planning a trip to Zion, that you can't, you got to park your car and get in one of these shuttle buses to move around in the park. All right, so we have made it to Watchman Trail. And if you don't want to take the shuttle into the park for whatever reason, and you still want an easy hike, you can always just head to the visitor center at the entrance to Zion National Park and head out on one of my favorite hikes along the Watchman Trail. And the Watchman Trail follows the Virgin River for a while before ascending up one of the canyon walls to a plateau where you can enjoy outstanding views of the canyon below. Pretty cool. All right, and we have lower emerald pools. And what am I doing in this picture? Bungee jumping? That's crazy. And yes, I did get to go bungee jumping in New Zealand this past January. Very interesting, fun experience and terrifying. If you're looking for, and no, by the way, I'm not bungee jumping here. I would never do that here. There's not a bungee jump in Zion National Park. So if you're looking for a place to escape the heat in Zion, then the Lower Emerald Pool Trail is a good choice for you. So this slightly uphill paved path runs through a dense patch of forest, providing a decent amount of shade throughout your walk. But the best part of this hike is the chance to walk behind a waterfall. Kids of all ages love this unique Zion hike. Walking through the midst of the waterfall is so fun and refreshing on a hot day. And once behind the waterfall, you can stop and enjoy the cooler temperatures and take in the beautiful scenery, which includes some of the famous gardens in Zion, the hanging gardens. Kind of like in this picture, you can see some of the vegetation hanging off the wall. It's really pretty. Okay, this one is my favorite, you guys, the North Fork of the Virgin River. It's also known as the Zion Narrows. It's probably one of the most legendary canyons to hike in all of Zion National Park. So to start this hike, you need to take the shuttle to the end of the road, up the main canyon at the Temple of Sinawava, and here the majestic walls of the main canyon close in to form a tall and narrow canyon with beautiful dark corners and the Virgin River flowing all around you. And with beautiful flowing water and barely any direct sunlight reaching the bottom of the canyon, this is the slot canyon that all other slot canyons are compared to. Seriously, it's amazing. Since this trek involves hiking down the middle of a river, and the river is the trail, it's not open when the snow is melting in the spring. The river is just too high and too cold at that point. So typically, this route is best hiked June through September. Before hiking this river with kids, you should head to the visitor center or a local outfitter to get updates on the latest weather conditions. You do not want to hike here if there's a possibility of rain anywhere in the area because you do not want to be caught in a flash flood in the bottom of a canyon. That is a big no-no and very scary, okay? And since this is an out and back hike, you can hike and wade into the canyon as far as you want and then turn around and come back. It can be as long as you want it to be. The scenery is spectacular and you surely will not be disappointed. All right. And for those of you asking if you can swim in the Narrows, yes, actually, depending on the time of year you go in, you might be wading through water that's deeper than your chest and maybe swimming through some certain sections the further down the canyon that you go. So there is some opportunities for swimming in there, which is really nice on a hot day. All right, and just like that, our road trip is coming to an end. We've visited all of Utah's magnificent Mighty 5 national parks. I hope you know what all of them are by now. And it's time to head to the nearest airport to fly home. So the closest regional airport to Zion National Park is in St. George, Utah, which is about an hour's drive away from Springdale. Right there at the base is Zion. But you can also choose to drive to Las Vegas, Nevada for a better flight selection, and that's about 3 hours away. So let's go ahead and do one last check-in to see what you've learned before we head into the Q&A. So I'm going to launch poll number 3 here. I just launched it. You should be seeing it come up on your screen. And for those of you asking, no, I have never been stuck in a flash flood before because I do not risk being in a canyon when it's raining. That's really scary. Oh, nice. Pierce has done all of those hikes, it looks like. That's really cool. And no, Mary, I'm not in any of these photos for real. I've been to all these places, but I'm just pretend Photoshop myself in with really weird poses so you guys could laugh. All right, so number 1, Johnny wants to be a good example of someone who follows the rules of Leave No Trace. Which of the following behaviors should he change to make sure he's following the rules? So what should he not be doing here? Should he not be taking pictures of a cool rock he found? Should he not be feeding a chipmunk his leftover apple core? Should he not be carrying a map in his backpack? Or should he not be staying on the trail while he's hiking? Which one of those behaviors should he change to adhere to the rules of Leave No Trace? And number 2, what is the geological feature that Bryce Canyon is best known for? Is it hoodoos? Is it sand dunes? Is it mountains? Or is it caves? Which one of those is best known in Bryce? And number 3, Zion National Park is known for its canyon landscapes. Is that true or false? All right, I'm going to give you just a few more seconds here to answer. Okay, and I see a lot of you are starting to put some good questions in here for the Q&A, which is coming up next. So if you have any good questions, put them in the box. I've been kind of tagging a few that I've seen come up as they go along, so I can answer those as well. Awesome. All right, I'm going to end the poll, everyone, and share the results so we can go over them together. So number 1, Johnny wants to be a good example of someone who follows the rules of Leave No Trace. Which of the following behaviors should he change to make sure he's following the rules? The answer was feeding a chipmunk his leftover apple core. We don't want to feed these animals, even if it's a cute little chipmunk that runs right up to you because it's been fed by other people. Don't continue that behavior. You do not want to get these animals used to that. Sometimes they bite too, which is not good. They might have rabies. All right, so number 2 is what is the geological feature that Bryce Canyon is best known for? The answer is hoodoos. Nice job. Looks like 77% of you got that right. And number 3 is true or false. Zion National Park is known for its canyon landscapes. That is true. Awesome. Okay. Good job, people. You guys are just so smart, and I love it. Okay. Let's see, what do we have here? So many good questions. Okay, so we've made it through our Utah road trip and have arrived to the question and answer section. So I've been seeing so many great questions come throughout the course of this presentation, but please, if you have any more questions, type them into the Q&A box now. I'm probably not going to get to everyone's questions. There's always a ton, but I'll hit around maybe like 6 to 8 of them today. All right, so let's roll. All right, so Let's see. Jen is asking, are the parks open to visit right now with everything going on? That's actually a really good question, Jen, and it's something we've been asked a lot lately, trust me. Many national parks aren't open today, but most are planning on opening at the end of May, assuming that everything goes okay. At least that's what I've been hearing. And just like the States, it sounds like the parks will also be opening in phases over the course of the summer. So in phase 1, the entrance stations and some of the bathrooms might be open. In phase 2, they'll be opening things like visitor centers and gift shops and more guest services. And in phase 3, that's kind of when things mostly go back to normal, for the most part. I don't know if there's really a new normal, but it'll be our new normal, right? And there's no telling how quickly the parks will move through all the phases. Only time will tell, I guess. So I'm personally, though, looking forward to having all of our national parks back open again so we can go visit them. All right. Let's see. I'm getting a lot of, can you see any wildlife in these parks? I'm just going to answer this question by Hannah, who's asking this particular question that came across. And yes, you can definitely see a lot of wildlife. We didn't really cover wildlife today like we have on a lot of our other presentations. I just didn't have time to fit it in there, but there are definitely some neat opportunities to see wildlife in these parks, and between the parks if you're road tripping. So on our trips, we've seen animals like mule deer, pronghorn, foxes, prairie dogs, chipmunks. I guess like mountain lions and black bears are in these places too, but they're really, really rare, so you probably won't see one of those, but you never know. And then you've got all sorts of birds like your turkeys and red-tailed hawks and your Clark's nutcrackers. And then there's like all sorts of lizards and some snakes and cool bugs and things like that too. So yeah, there's definitely tons of cool desert wildlife with really neat adaptations for living in these desert-like environments. All right, let's find some more. Oh my gosh, so many questions. Awesome. For those of you asking when we're planning to restart our tours, we're starting a lot of our tours in late June as of today. So that's kind of what we're planning on. Layla here is asking, could you add a trip to the Grand Canyon onto the beginning or the end of this Utah trip? I know we talked a little bit about the Grand Canyon at the beginning. It's down in Arizona. And this is a good question, Layla. So really, this is your road trip. So you can do whatever you want. You can add on Grand Canyon if you want. So if you want to fit in Utah's 5 national parks and the Grand Canyon down in Arizona, you'd probably want to have at least a couple of weeks free in your schedule to cover all the driving distance and still have some time to explore and relax at each park. But it's definitely doable to add a trip on to the Grand Canyon, in my opinion. I'd recommend doing the Utah portion in the exact order we did it in this virtual webinar or this virtual adventure. And instead of continuing on to St. George or Las Vegas, I just head straight down from Zion National Park towards the Grand Canyon. And I think the North Rim is maybe like 3 hours away, and the South Rim, which is a more popular rim of the Grand Canyon, is about 5 hours drive away. So yeah, we've definitely combined them on our trips before, so it's totally doable. All right, let's see. Is there anything else you can do besides hike in these national parks from Thomas? Okay, good question, Thomas. I love it. And yes, there is definitely much more to these parks than hiking. Also, there's just so much more beyond these national parks in general that I didn't even have time to cover today. So take Moab, for example, all right? Moab is that outdoorsy town near Arches and Canyonlands National Parks that I mentioned earlier. Moab is the slick rock capital of the world, and it's known for its amazing mountain biking. But also you can book Jeep tours and Hummer tours, you can do ATV rides, you can go canyoneering and rock climbing, you can go paddle boarding, you can go horseback riding, you can go on a jet boat tour. The list is endless. And the Colorado River is right there, and that river offers some really cool like rafting options, I guess. And you can go on a laid-back float trip for a day, or you can do like a multi-day whitewater adventure. So there's all sorts of cool stuff you can do outside of the national parks as well. And a few things you can do inside that aren't just hiking, but there's so much beyond our national parks in Utah. With 75% public land, there's a lot of different stuff you can do. So yeah, plenty beyond hiking, not just in Moab, but throughout Utah. All right, let's see. So Corey is asking, can you go to these national parks outside of the summertime, like in winter? Yeah, thanks for your question, Corey. The answer is yes. All of these parks in Utah are open year-round. That's not the case for all national parks, but the ones in Utah are. And the wintertime can actually be a really neat time to go. There's not going to be as many people, and you might get to see some of these red rock landscapes with some snow, which makes it really pretty. And Bryce Canyon actually is located anywhere between 8,000 to 9,000 feet, so there'll definitely be snow there. Just picture all those hoodoos with a cap of white snow on top. It would be so pretty, right? And to go into any of these national parks in the winter, though, you'll want to do a little extra research just to see what services are open and, you know, what businesses are open and things like that, because there are some that shut down in the winter or have shorter winter hours since there aren't as many visitors in the wintertime. But definitely a fine time to go. All right, and Adam is asking, I was wondering if I could bring my dog on a trip like this. He's a yellow lab and super friendly, and his name is Ollie. Cute. Ollie sounds amazing. I have a black lab, actually. His name is Bruno. And as much as I wish we could bring pets into the national parks aren't really pet friendly. Yes, you can have one in there, but there's a lot of rules. You're not allowed to have them out on any of the trails, and the only places you can have them out of the car are pretty much limited to the parking lot and the parking lot's immediate surroundings. So, and even then they have to be on a leash. So it's not really realistic to keep Ollie with you in the car while you're out hiking all day, because it's just too hot in the car, especially down in the desert, right? So in my opinion, I think it's best to just leave your dog at home with a friend or board them at a facility. But, you know, I hate the idea of leaving my dog behind when I travel, but it's definitely less stressful, and it allows me to enjoy my time rather than worry about my dog being stuck in the car all day long. So yeah, I think that's good. All right, just gonna maybe answer one or two more questions here. So Abby is asking, can you climb on any of the arches or hoodoos in any of these parks? I wonder if you're asking that because of all of my awesome photoshopped photos throughout this presentation. The answer is no, you're not supposed to climb on top of any of the arches or the hoodoos or anything, mainly because it's dangerous to you, and no one wants you to fall off any of these features, myself included. Don't use me as an example. Those were all photoshopped. Also, many of the features are fragile since they're made out of sandstone, meaning that humans climbing on them could break them. So that's not really cool either. There are plenty of areas though for scrambling around on boulders and slick rock, and those are perfect places for kids to climb. But I'd say stay away from the climbing that has the scary exposure, because I don't want any of you to fall, okay? And if you're really interested in climbing something, there's rock climbing tours and canyoneering trips and things like that that you can book with a professional guide who will make sure you're safe and all roped up and all that good stuff, okay? Just make sure, oh my gosh, there's so many questions, and I apologize, guys. There's not nearly enough time to get through all of these, but thank you for putting them in there. Really appreciate all of you being so involved. It's awesome. Okay, so if you are interested in following up on a few more resources, you can come check out a few of these links. There's a lot more information on becoming a junior ranger at this link. And there's a lot of really cool like online junior ranger programs for all of the different national parks. So if you want to go learn more about Utah, there's some really cool online resources that you can look at on the National Park Service website for junior ranger. Just type in to Google National Park Service junior ranger and you'll see a lot of stuff come up there. And if you love learning about the geology on this presentation, there's a lot more where that came from. This is just like a kids geology website that's linked on here that'll teach you a lot more on geology than I possibly could. And then finally, we have some different ranger talks. So on YouTube, you can always just type in the name of your favorite national park plus ranger talk, and a cool ranger talk will pop up and you can listen to a ranger tell you all about whatever national park you're interested in, okay? If you don't have time to write these down, by the way, just download this recording tomorrow and you can always go back to this slide. All right, and we've only got a few virtual adventures left, people. I can't believe it. Next week is going to be fun because I'm going to have a friend who also happens to be a coworker presenting along with me. His name is Adam, and he's Austin Adventures European Operations Manager, and we're going to the Netherlands in Europe where he actually lives. So I guess you could say he's an expert if he lives there, right? And we haven't been to Europe yet on one of these virtual adventures, so I'm really excited to join up with Adam so we can show you his beautiful country. So please join us next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time if you want to go to the Netherlands. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today. I really appreciate you joining me on these virtual adventures. We are making it through. If you had a good time learning about Utah today, please don't hesitate to share this with your friends. The more the merrier. And as for my closing comments, thank you to everyone who's been joining me. I can't wait for these national parks to open back up. They are closed right now due to coronavirus, but it's only going to be a matter of time before they're back open again and before our country is opening up again. There's a lot of states right now that are opening up, so I'm really looking forward to life getting back to semi-normal. But yeah, I'm sure all of you are as well. I'm sure you miss your friends. I'm sure you miss, going out to the parks and things like that. So I can't wait, it couldn't come soon enough when life can go back to our new normal, but let's just keep on making it through. We're going to keep going on these virtual adventures for a few more weeks. And yes, we will be running some trips this summer. So I'm going to have to phase out of virtual adventures so I can start getting people out on real adventures, which is crazy. I can't believe that time of year is here already. So I really appreciate all of you joining me. Thanks so much. And I hope to see you next week in the Netherlands. Bye-bye, everyone.